Hi, today I'll be keeping you company by telling you a scary story about a woman finds a beautiful vintage wedding dress in an old thrift store. When she tries it on, she immediately feels an intense connection to the dress, almost as if it was made for her. But after buying it, strange things start happening. She begins seeing a dark figure watching her from mirrors and hearing whispers when she's alone. You'll be shocked by the plot twist. So, make sure your pillow is comfy, put on your earbuds, wrap yourself in a blanket, and welcome to the Urban and Myth Scary Story Podcast, Episode 6, The Bride's Curse. Chapter 1, The Dress. Anna never meant to stop at the old thrift store on Willow Street. The place had always been a curiosity, wedged between a rundown antique shop and a boarded-up bakery. Its windows were dim, filled with forgotten things, a graveyard for the discarded and unwanted. Yet that day, something about the place called to her, an inexplicable pull that made her slow her steps as she passed by. The bell above the door jingled, though the sound was almost drowned out by the musty scent of time itself. Inside, it was even more cramped than it looked from the street, packed wall to wall with dusty trinkets, mismatched furniture, and clothes that seemed to belong to long-dead generations. Anna's eyes wandered aimlessly over old photographs and chipped china until she saw it. There, tucked away in the corner, half hidden by a rack of coats, was the most beautiful wedding dress she had ever seen. The lace was intricate, ivory with a golden hue, and the silk beneath seemed almost untouched by age. As she moved closer, her hand brushed against the fabric, and a chill ran up her spine. But it wasn't the cold kind of chill. It was the kind that made her feel alive, alert, like every nerve in her body was suddenly awake. "May I help you?" The voice startled her. A woman, hunched over and old, appeared from behind the counter. Her eyes were sharp, though her smile was all wrong, too wide, too toothy. "How much is the dress?" Anna asked, already knowing she wanted it. The old woman looked at her for a long time before speaking. "That one's special. It's been here for years, but no one ever buys it, always returns, like it doesn't want to leave." Anna laughed, but it came out strained. "Well, I'll take it." As soon as the words left her lips, she felt it again, that strange pull. It was as if the dress had chosen her, not the other way around. The woman wrapped the dress carefully, but Anna noticed how her hands trembled slightly as she handed over the parcel. "Good luck," she muttered, though it sounded less like a blessing and more like a warning. Back at home, Anna couldn't resist trying it on immediately. She slipped into the dress, the fabric hugging her curves in a way that felt almost too perfect, like it was made for her. The mirror in her bedroom was old, full of streaks and imperfections, but when she looked at herself, she barely recognized the woman staring back. It wasn't just the dress that made her look different. It was something in her eyes, something darker, unfamiliar. She blinked, and for a split second, she thought she saw a shadow behind her, a dark figure standing just out of sight. When she turned around, there was nothing there. But the uneasy feeling stayed, like an itch she couldn't scratch. That night, as she lay in bed, she could have sworn she heard whispers coming from the corner where the dress now hung, perfectly still yet full of presence. Chapter 2, The Mirror. Anna tried to convince herself it was just her imagination. The whispers, the shadow, the strange connection she felt with the dress. It had to be the stress of work, or maybe just the fact that she'd been living alone for too long. After all, everyone has moments when reality bends around the edges, right? The next morning, she felt a strange compulsion to put the dress on again. It was absurd, really. She didn't even have a reason to wear it. No upcoming wedding, no event. But as her fingers traced the lace, she felt the same magnetic pull. Before she knew it, she was standing in front of the mirror again, the dress fitting her like a second skin. It was then that the reflection shifted. At first, it was subtle, just a flicker in the corner of the glass, like a trick of the light. Anna stepped closer, leaning in, her breath fogging up the surface. She wiped the glass with her palm, and that's when she saw it. Behind her, in the far corner of the room, stood a figure, a woman draped in a black veil. Her face was obscured, but there was something unmistakable about her presence. Anna spun around, heart pounding in her chest, but the room was empty. The air, however, felt heavy, thick like the tension just before a storm. She turned back to the mirror, her reflection now clear. But the feeling didn't leave. Over the next few days, the visions became more frequent. Every time she caught her reflection, there was something off. A shadow where there shouldn't be, a movement that didn't quite match her own. And the whispers, they followed her everywhere. Soft, unintelligible, but unmistakably real. At night, they were the worst, filling her room with an invisible presence. Anna stopped sleeping well, her mind racing, always alert for the next sign. She thought about returning the dress, but every time she considered it, a strange sense of attachment flared up inside her, stronger than any fear. By the end of the week, she was barely eating, barely thinking about anything but the dress and what it had brought into her life. One afternoon, while cleaning, Anna accidentally knocked over a hand mirror on the dresser. It fell to the floor, shattering into jagged pieces. As she bent down to pick it up, her heart stopped. In the shards of broken glass, she saw her reflection, but it wasn't just her. The veiled figure was there again, her face closer this time, more defined. And this time, Anna could see something behind the veil, eyes, cold and lifeless, staring directly at her. With a scream, she dropped the glass and backed away, the whispers in her ears now louder than ever, a cacophony of voices overlapping one another. There was no mistaking it now. The dress, the shadows, the whispers. Something had come with the dress, something dark, and it wasn't going to leave easily. Shaken, she hurried to her bedroom and yanked the dress from its hanger, throwing it into the farthest corner of the closet. But even as she slammed the door shut, she couldn't shake the feeling that it was watching her, waiting. Chapter 3: The Past. The whispers didn't stop, even with the dress tucked away in the dark. Anna found herself growing increasingly agitated, every creak in her old house setting her nerves on edge. Sleep became more difficult as the sensation of being watched lingered, even when she was alone. And it wasn't just the house. Mirrors seemed to betray her, the reflection often showing fleeting figures just out of view. Determined to find answers, Anna started digging into the history of the dress. There had to be some logical explanation, something to make sense of the strange occurrences. Maybe it was just stress getting the better of her, or maybe there was something more. She searched for any information she could find about the shop where she'd bought the dress, but it was like the place didn't exist. No website, no reviews, not even a name in the local business registry. That alone made her uneasy. How could a store like that just vanish? Frustrated, she took a different approach, scanning the internet for stories about haunted dresses or cursed objects. Most of what she found was nonsense. Urban legends, ghost stories, nothing that felt grounded. That is, until she came across a news clipping from 1946. The article told the tragic story of a woman named Margaret Everly, a local bride who had been murdered on her wedding day. She was found in her bridal suite, the veil torn from her head, Her throat slit. The details were gruesome, but what made Anna's stomach turn was the photograph that accompanied the article. Margaret's dress. It was the exact same one hanging in her closet. Her blood ran cold as she read further. Margaret's murder had never been solved. The groom, her family, and the guests all swore she had no enemies, no one who would want to harm her. Yet the article mentioned something odd. Some claimed that Margaret's spirit had been seen wandering the halls of the old church, where she was supposed to have been married, still wearing the dress, waiting. Anna's fingers trembled as she closed the article. The dress, her dress, was not just an antique. It was a relic of something dark, something violent. Desperately, she dug deeper, finding more troubling stories. Several women had worn the dress after Margaret's death. Some had been brides, others had simply bought it secondhand, just like Anna, and every one of them had either vanished, died under mysterious circumstances, or had gone mad. The dress was never destroyed, always resurfacing in some forgotten corner of another store, as if waiting for its next victim. Anna couldn't breathe. She stared at the computer screen, her reflection dimly visible in the glass of the monitor. But this time, she wasn't alone. In the corner of the screen, just behind her, the shadow was back, closer, clearer. It was Margaret. Anna slammed the laptop shut and ran to her bedroom, throwing open the closet door. There, in the darkness, the dress hung, pristine as ever, untouched by time or history. Yet now, when she looked at it, the whispers grew louder in her ears, and the air around it seemed to thicken. Margaret wasn't waiting anymore. She was here. Chapter 4. The Possession. The days blurred together after that. Anna didn't leave the house. She barely ate, barely slept. She spent her time pacing, her mind a maze of anxiety and dread. The whispers grew louder, the figure in the mirrors more defined. Margaret was everywhere now, always just out of reach, always just behind her. Anna felt herself unraveling, her grip on reality slipping. She tried to tell herself it was all in her head, but deep down, she knew better. The dress had brought something dark into her life, something that wasn't leaving. One evening, as dusk settled into the house, she found herself standing in front of the closet again. Her hand trembled as it reached for the knob. She didn't want to open it, didn't want to see the dress again, but she felt compelled, like something inside her was pulling the strings. When she finally opened the door, the dress seemed to shimmer in the dim light, its presence overwhelming. Without thinking, she reached out and touched it, the soft silk sending an electric current through her veins. Before she realized what she was doing, Anna had slipped it off the hanger, holding it up to her body. It felt right, almost comforting. The moment she put the dress on, her reflection in the nearby mirror shifted. It wasn't just her standing there anymore. It was Margaret. Anna's own features were still there, but her posture, her expression, the way her eyes narrowed, all Margaret. And then Anna spoke, but the voice wasn't hers. "You should have left me alone." She gasped and stepped back, her hand flying to her throat. The voice had been cold, distant, but worse than that, it was full of anger. The reflection moved again, this time without her. Margaret's figure loomed larger in the glass, her dark eyes staring directly at Anna, filled with a hatred that made her skin crawl. "I didn't mean to," Anna stammered, backing away from the mirror. "I didn't know." The whispers grew louder, now clear words echoing in her mind. "You will know." Anna dropped to her knees, clutching her head. She could feel Margaret pressing into her mind, her body no longer her own. Memories flashed through her, visions of a wedding day gone horribly wrong, a groom who never came, a life stolen too soon. Margaret's rage, her despair, her need for vengeance consumed Anna, filling every corner of her consciousness. The room began to spin as the whispers became deafening, drowning out everything else. Anna felt her fingers tighten around the fabric of the dress, felt her limbs move without her control. She tried to scream, but no sound came out. Margaret wasn't just haunting her anymore. She was becoming her. As the night stretched on, Anna felt her will slip further and further away. Her thoughts were no longer her own. When she finally stood in front of the mirror again, it was Margaret's face staring back at her, eyes glinting with a twisted satisfaction. For a moment, Anna thought she saw herself in the reflection, a flicker of her own terrified eyes. But then Margaret smiled, a cold, lifeless smile, and Anna was gone. Chapter 5. The Confrontation. Anna wasn't sure how much time had passed since Margaret had fully taken over. Hours? Days? Everything felt foggy, as if she were floating in and out of reality. She could feel herself trapped somewhere deep inside, her thoughts muffled, her body no longer responding to her will. It was Margaret now, her thoughts, her movements, her voice. Anna was a passenger, helpless, watching through her own eyes. She stood in front of the mirror again, but it was no longer just a reflection. Margaret's figure loomed large, her features clearer than ever. For the first time, Anna saw her face, not the pale, shadowy version she had glimpsed before, but a real human face. And in those eyes, Anna saw nothing but rage. "You took everything from me," Margaret whispered, her voice dripping with venom. "My life, my future. You stole it all." Anna wanted to scream, to fight back, but she had no control. Her own voice was gone, swallowed by the bride's fury. Margaret turned, lifting the veil from the closet where it had hung beside the dress. As she placed it over her head, the room grew colder, the walls seeming to close in. Anna could feel the weight of the veil pressing down on her mind, like a thick fog clouding her thoughts. "You'll see," Margaret continued, her tone low and deliberate. "You'll see what it's like to have everything ripped away." The veil's lace brushed Anna's skin, and she felt a surge of panic rise within her. Her heart raced, pounding in her chest, but her body remained still, obeying only Margaret's will. She was losing herself more and more with every passing second. Margaret moved toward the mirror again, this time lifting a hand to touch its surface. Anna's reflection was gone, replaced entirely by Margaret's image. And then, as if pulled by some invisible force, Margaret stepped into the mirror, her figure melting into the glass as though it were water. Anna's body followed, stepping into the reflective void, even as her mind screamed to stop. Inside the mirror, everything felt distorted. The room behind her was the same, yet different, darker, the edges blurred and shifting like a half-remembered dream. In this twisted version of her home, Margaret's voice echoed louder than ever. "You'll live here now," Margaret whispered, her tone sinister. "Just like I have, forgotten, trapped." Anna struggled to regain control, to push Margaret out, but the veil had woven itself around her thoughts, suffocating her mind. The harder she fought, the weaker she felt. Suddenly, the vision shifted. Margaret wasn't in the mirror anymore. She was behind Anna, in the real world, standing in the bedroom. And for the first time, Anna realized what was happening. Margaret wasn't just trying to possess her. She was trying to swap places. The dress, the mirror, the veil, it was all a ritual. Margaret had been waiting for someone like Anna. Someone she could take over completely and leave trapped behind. The bride wanted her life back. In a final burst of desperation, Anna focused all her energy, pushing against the invisible barrier that held her in the mirror's world. The glass rippled beneath her touch, but it held firm. She could see Margaret smiling in the real world, running her hands over the dress, admiring how it fit, admiring Anna's life. Anna screamed, but the sound was lost in the void. Margaret's laugh echoed around her, cold and victorious. And then, just as Anna was about to lose all hope, something shifted. The mirror began to crack, thin fractures spiderwebbing across its surface. Margaret's smile faltered as she glanced at the mirror, the cracks reflecting the growing tension. Anna pushed harder, her mind burning with effort. The mirror shattered, exploding outward in a shower of glass. And in that split second, Anna was free. Gasping, she found herself back in her body, the dress clinging to her skin. Margaret's voice screamed in her ears, a final, desperate wail before fading into nothing. The veil fell from her head, crumpling to the floor. Anna staggered back, ripping the dress off and throwing it across the room. The whispers were gone. The presence, the shadows, the cold. They were all gone. But as she looked at the shattered mirror, Anna knew one thing for certain. Margaret was still out there, and she wouldn't be forgotten. Chapter 6. The final wedding. The house was silent. For the first time in days, Anna felt like she could breathe again. The shattered mirror lay in pieces across the floor, glinting in the dim light of her bedroom. The dress, discarded in the corner, no longer looked elegant or beautiful. It looked dead, wilted, like something that had finally given up its fight. But deep inside, Anna knew it wasn't over. Margaret was still out there, lurking in the shadows, waiting for another opportunity. Even now, as the house settled and the whispers had faded, there was a lingering sense of unfinished business. The connection wasn't completely severed. Anna sat on the edge of her bed, staring at the dress. Her mind felt like a battlefield, exhausted from the fight for control. She touched her face, half expecting to feel someone else's skin, but it was hers. The veil, crumpled on the floor, felt like a piece of another world now, something that didn't belong in her reality anymore. She had won, but at what cost? The next few days passed in a blur. Anna avoided the bedroom as much as possible, sleeping on the couch, jumping at every creak and groan the old house made. She thought about getting rid of the dress, throwing it away, burning it even. But something stopped her every time. A part of her, whether out of fear or some leftover attachment, couldn't bring herself to destroy it. On the third night after the mirror shattered, Anna awoke to the sound of a distant hum. At first, she thought it was part of a dream, a low vibration just at the edge of her consciousness. But as her eyes fluttered open, she realized it was coming from the closet. She sat up, her heart pounding in her chest. The dress. It had to be the dress. Slowly, she crept toward the closet door, her hand trembling as it reached for the knob. When she opened it, the dress lay exactly where she had left it, motionless and ordinary. But the hum, no, it wasn't a hum anymore. It was a voice, low and barely audible, as if it were whispering from the fabric itself. Anna's blood ran cold. I'm still here. The voice was unmistakable. Margaret. She wasn't gone. She was waiting. Anna slammed the closet door shut, her breath ragged. She couldn't do this again. She wouldn't. There was only one way to end it. The dress had to be destroyed, completely, utterly. It had to be reduced to nothing but ash. Without hesitation, she grabbed the dress, holding it as far from her body as possible. The fabric seemed to cling to her fingers, as though it didn't want to let go. But Anna was resolute. She marched out of the house, into the night air, and down to the edge of the yard where a rusty old fire pit sat unused. Her hands shook as she piled kindling and wood into the pit, placing the dress on top. It sat there, pristine as ever, its lace glinting in the moonlight. She struck a match, her heart racing as the flame flickered to life. "Goodbye," Anna whispered, tossing the match onto the dress. For a moment, the fire hesitated, as if the fabric resisted the flames. But then the fire caught, licking up the hem of the dress, curling around the delicate lace. The whispers returned, louder now, desperate, as if Margaret herself were begging from within the flames. Anna watched as the fire consumed the dress, the silk and lace turning black, crumbling to ash. The whispers became screams, rising into the night air, echoing around her. But Anna stood firm, watching until the dress was nothing but smoldering remains. And then, silence. For the first time since she had put on the dress, Anna felt a deep sense of peace wash over her. It was over. Truly over. She turned to go back inside, but before she did, she caught one last glimpse of something in the ash, a faint outline, barely visible, but there, the silhouette of a bride, staring up at her with hollow eyes. Anna blinked, and it was gone, but as she closed the door behind her, she couldn't help but wonder, was Margaret really gone? Or was she waiting, lurking in the shadows, for another chance to walk down the aisle? The fire pit smoldered in the dark, and somewhere, far off in the distance, a whisper floated on the wind. "I do."